Leah Frid, welcome to the lockdown sessions. Thank you so much for joining me on this.
Thanks for having me.
I think this is so cool. So Leah, you're based out of North Carolina. You're in Raleigh. You and I met on a corporate job I was doing 7, 8 years ago, where we came together. And actually, if I remember correctly, you and I were facilitating what could have been a battle between two parts of a business trying to join together, and we were like the mediators.
That's right.
And if
Trying
I
to
also,
transform people's mindsets. Yeah,
right, but what I really remember about those 3 days was sitting at dinner with you in a restaurant in Munich and just talking for about 2 hours while we ate dinner and thinking that it was just a lovely connection. So to be able to sit now and chew the fat for 7 hours is, for me, is just fabulous. Um, and having spent 35 plus years working in the corporate world, you're now in the process of going consulting route. So I applaud that because that's where I spent my whole career. And anyone who does that never needs courage to do it. They need courage to continue doing it uh, when the times are difficult. So if you were going to choose a period of history which would be challenging to go into business, it would be during COVID.
that's right.
But your passion and your expert, if I can lean straight into that, is people and talent. And I guess that's why the business you'll go into and develop is around people, process, and talent. So I'm genuinely interested in your take on your observations on behaviors, particularly with leaders, because you sit at that top senior director level. What have you observed in the way leaders have shown up over the last 6 months? And what does that tell you about what we need to be doing as leaders moving forward?
Yeah. So, it's been a journey over the past 6 months. I think at first, people just wanted to get really creative and be responsive and come out with something fast. Um, I saw it. I saw people making quick decisions, not necessarily the right decision. Um, and we had a lot of uncertainty going on. But I think that what I've seen is that the best leaders are showing up as being vulnerable and acknowledging that this is difficult for everybody. It's difficult to the owners of companies, it's the associates, to the parents, to every person as an individual. And we have to acknowledge that. We have to acknowledge that none of us have the answers. We're figuring it out in a very agile way. And the best comes out in us when we acknowledge that. When we don't come out and say, we've got all the answers. We do not have the answers. We do not have a crystal ball that says, this is what it's going to look like in 6 months. We don't know. So we're living in such uncertainty. We have to think about what are the things that we can do for our talent, for our associates each day. Like, what are the things? And not the tactical things, but how do you need to show up? So things like it really making sure, I said vulnerability was one. Empathy. Can't say enough about empathy. We have to not just say be empathetic. We have to do it different than we ever have before. Because what people are faced with right now is different from what it was a year ago. These are difficult changes that every person is being affected by in a different way. So good, understanding and listening, and making sure that really we're showing up with and committed to it. So I'll pause for a minute and talk a little bit about how we're doing so much videoing. So a lot of people say, well, you got to meet with your team a lot. And we need to make sure we're seeing our teams, having more team meetings, have more one-on-ones. I can tell you that's not necessarily true. What It's about the moments that matter. It's about showing up when it counts. It's about not being a check the box exercise. Going out and telling your leadership team to make sure they're having one-on-ones and make sure they're having more regular team meetings is a check the box exercise. What are you going to do to show up in this time that is absolutely critical to demonstrate good leadership? That's key. And that comes with showing up with heart, really your heart. If you're rushed and you're just showing up that you're going through the schedule, this was on my calendar, so we're going to do it, and you're going to rush through it, not the right answer.
No.
Cancel the meeting, show up when it matters. We show up when you can be the person you need to be. But people are seeing through that. And I will tell you that most of our associates know the difference between when it's a check the box and when you show up with your heart. And if you can't give it your heart right now, that's probably going to be a flaw in your capability as a leader.
You can't fake it till you become it here. You know, I was talking to someone the other day, within your old company, and they sit as a director in APAC, and they said something brilliant. We were talking about empathy, actually, and he said that the world's in a privileged position right now, because for the first time in the last 100 years, everyone can genuinely empathize with what the next person, their neighbor, is going through on a generic level. And he said that although we're all going through the same storm, what we have to realize is we're all in different boats. And some people are in 100-foot cruise liners, and others are in little dinghies that are leaking, and some are in canoes. But we're all going through that same storm. So when you talk about that uncertainty, it's not just uncertain, it's really, and this I'm quoting another coaching colleague of mine, we're in the I don't know world. I love Andrew Cuomo. I love watching his show on CNN. He just cracks me up because he's like a softer version of his brother who's just so direct and hard, right? But he ran a segment on his show the other day called "We're in the IDK and WTF zone."
So true. So true. We are being faced with things, we're having to really lean into our problem solving skills more than we ever wanted to. Our resilience is being tested beyond anybody's capability. The things that we're having to take all at once, all of these changes in lifestyle, in our dynamics as families, as associates, as everything has changed in almost every capacity. It's hard. And so, I would tell you, Brad, that every person's situation is unique and how it's affecting each person matters. You can't speak in generalities right now. We cannot. We can't say this is what we need to do for our associates. It's not a one size fits all. It's not. Everybody has different needs. I have a need right now. I'm dealing with a 80-year-old mother-in-law who has not left the house in 6 months and is terrified. And we've had to figure out how to get food delivered. Now, I'm not dealing with children right now. My kids are grown, but I still have that burden of worrying about her and her getting sick and how to care for her, how to figure out ways to get her medicine, to get her food delivered, and things that I didn't even think I would ever have to think about. And so, everybody's being faced with unique challenges of their own. There are cultural things that make it hard. Some people have 10 people living in one house. Some people, have more than one professional working from home with not enough internet and maybe not even enough computers to all operate. These are all unique. And every time we sit down with an associate, we need to ask some questions and listen. And we need to show up really understanding. So, going back to your question, as leaders, do not broad stroke and we really need to dig under the covers, not broad brush solutions. We need to think about our teams in a more specific way and not just come out with, oh, well, we're going to give everybody X money for their expenses, or we're going to make sure that may not be the answer. That may not be the problem we need to solve. There
Right.
are many different solutions, and we have to get creative in how we can accommodate unique situations because everybody has a different one.
You reminded me there of, I think it's Maya Angelou who said, people never remember what you say, they never remember what you do, but they remember how you make them feel.
That's right.
And when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, how does a leader, you've lived in the world of technology, right?
I have.
Archetype technology leader, empathy and compassion normally is not the strongest quality. Okay, and I'm saying it with a smile. I spent 20 years working with tech companies, but it's not. And you've just said you can't fake it. So
Yeah.
what's happening to thousands of people in the workforce who are needing this compassion, if I'm understanding you right,
Mm-hmm.
who are needing compassion from their leaders, and these leaders don't know how to lead in to compassion because their way of compassion is sending you a little email to say, do you need anything?
Yeah, check the box, right? It's all never about the what; it's about the how. I'll say that 1,000 times. Um, anybody can do the what, right? So you're absolutely right. We are all we've both done behavioral assessments over our careers and things like that. There is absolutely different ways people are wired, and that's just who we are. And so this could be very difficult to some of the best leaders that we have because it's not something it's difficult on a normal day. And now they have to do this. So I think that as a senior leadership team, we also have to think about our managers and next levels to are they capable? And do we know where they're going to be able how they're going to be able to show up and where their gaps are? And I say that because we right now have corporate changes happening, strategic changes happening with companies, and we have this human side of it going on. And I think it's really important for our senior leadership to understand that it may be a good moment, as painful as sales and some of our big projects and how critical, these things are so critical to strategy, but it's maybe important to take a moment and pause and say, is any of that going to be valuable if our people don't make it through this? So taking some time to think about what our leaders and our managers need, extra time, extra space, a more balanced prioritization so that they can lean in on the human side of this, the associate side, and be there. Uh, it, if they're so focused on so many tactical deliverables and strategic things, that's not going to help the situation. So we might need to think about as a leadership team, what is it we're asking our leaders to do in light of what they really need to do, which is first and foremost, be a leader. And so, balancing that is really, I think, critical as well. And making sure we are giving our managers the time to to be where put their time into their people right
Do you sense that organizations are going to really have to, so not just leaders, but organizations are going to have to shift how they do? Because I'm thinking psychological safety, for example, as
now?
globally we start to try and move back into offices. I'm talking to some people and they're sitting in offices and there's 3 other people who have come in that day. And the world looks so different. I wonder, the companies need to change what's important. Are we going to stop measuring that output because we need to measure how people are feeling?
Yeah, and we're going to have to measure it differently. It's not a engagement score the way we have done it in the past.
Right.
Uh, we really need to transform our thinking around that. It'd be interesting to actually ask our associates to write the
Mm-hmm.
questions that matter to them right now. You know, if I was sitting down with a firm right now, and where I would say, don't figure that out. Go ask them.
Yeah.
You're going to get the real, and that's all different levels, all different cultural geographies, everything. You got to get out there. Um, I do think companies are going to have to change. We're already seeing it. We're seeing it with how are we delivering benefits? Are benefits packages the same? The same things is important that were important
Right.
before. So they were already doing some of that tactical stuff, but to your point, it's about making sure we're providing flexibility. That's been in the works for months now, way before COVID. People need flexibility in their lives. You know, providing multiple ways to work. You know, do you have to be in the office all the time? When do you have to be in the office? Do you feel comfortable going in the office? I do not suggest that any company dictate that you have to go into the office until there's, safety in that. People, it will consume them if they think they're going to bring that home to a elderly parent or a new baby or something like that. You can't put that pressure on any associate right now. There is fear. At the same time, there are people that really don't care. Think that I just want to go to work. I just got to get out of my house. I'm going to risk it. I'm going to do it. So you have to have multiple solutions. It's going to have to be a very flex model. I don't think we're going to have, the space issues that we had in the past in these
No,
offices
for
because we
sure.
have to do it. I think back to when I was holding some of the meetings for my team, cramming 60 people into some of our biggest conference rooms. I mean, it's not even comprehensible right now. I wouldn't even, I mean, you just wouldn't do it. So yeah, we absolutely are going to have people opt in. But what's key there? To me, you can't let it go too far though, because you got to give options, but there has to be some responsibility in that. So giving an associate multiple ways to work is a great thing, but there is a communication and to make sure that you are communicating back that this week I'm going to be here, or there shouldn't be that uncertainty. So there's some responsibility that comes not in just what the leaders should be thinking about, but also in what the associates have to bring to the table, because they have to have some responsibility in that as well. So I would tell you leaders have to lean in, but I would also say associates have to do things differently too, like putting how they're working on their calendar, making sure their teams know where they are. So it's affecting everybody in every way, and setting
Yeah.
those expectations. If you set the expectations and you have an open dialogue about it, and I think that's going to be key.
Context is king, or queen, I think here, because if I know the context, I can deal with it. If I'm
Right.
emailing you with a workflow and you're not coming back to me, because I don't know that this is the moment where you're homeschooling or you're going to your mother-in-law to take some meds round, then I'm getting annoyed with you. So when I know the context, and I think this is really, I like what you're saying, because I'm seeing this with certain teams I'm working with. They're starting to have this kind of nuanced communication where they're being explicit with their word. Between 9 and 11, I'm doing this. Between 1 and 4, I'm doing this. Between 5 and 7, you can expect me to do that. This is when I'll reply to you. So everybody knows what everybody's doing and where they are. Not because I'm checking on you to make sure you're doing the job.
Yes.
No. And that's it's such a subtle line, because as a manager myself, if I'm sending out emails to my team letting them know what my day looks like, there may be that feeling they get, which is now they have to tell me, and what kind of judgment am I going to make if it says, between 1 and 3, it says busy? Because maybe they're going to do their meditation then, or like for me, going for a run at lunchtime. Um, it's this, it's nuance, right? It's the nuance of communication that we all have to get used to. And then if you throw in cultural norms, wow, then you've got a little bubbling pot of
Yeah.
culture mix.
Yeah. And you talked about the psychological safety part. You know, I can tell you that I actually witnessed recently with a colleague uh, a situation where I said, I have to go. I have to take care of my grandson for these couple hours. And they rolled their eyes.
Good luck.
I tell you, I was that that thing happening, that moment will never go away for me.
No.
And so it's not just saying, it's not the what you're doing and saying that it's okay for you to provide people this flexibility, but if you're rolling your eyes and doing shrugging your shoulders, or I'm telling you, it's everything is mattering. It's the how you're doing it. Um, we all as leaders are being told to be flexible, but you can't just say the words. You have to mean it. You have to mean it. It has to come from the heart. You have to really, people know when you're truly empathetic. I am telling you that the way we're showing up right now in this time will set the stage for months to come. Um, and how we are helping each other, leaders and associates helping each other to get through this, will build lifelong opinions. And,
People are
and
going to remember.
it will be very long consequences to how we are all acting and showing up. And they'll be good and they'll be bad.
It's a critical time for leaders, I believe, and in all my years of working with leaders, this is a great opportunity for leaders to genuinely lead from the heart.
Right.
I love when I first read Strengths Finders back in 2003 or something. The Tom Rath book that Gallup got involved with. Strength-based leadership they brought out like 10 years later, and there's a whole chapter on leading from the heart. This was 10 years ago, and a lot of leaders feel that kind of need to be alpha in their behavior, directional, focused, driven, goals, KPIs, MBOs, and all this kind of stuff, which actually there's a process for. But there isn't a process for humanity. There's a process for getting things done. I get that. Where the conversations I'm having in my coaching sessions right now, I did a coaching session recently with someone, CEO, tech company, and we spent nearly an hour. And this is a first world problem, by the way, that he's paying for coaching to talk about this for an hour. So I acknowledge that. But we spent an hour talking about his psychological safety in where he took his kids on holiday in order to set an example for his people to want them to take time off and what that would look like. Now, as I said, it's a first world problem to be discussing with your executive coach where you go on holiday.
Right.
But he wanted to role model taking a break even during COVID. He wanted a role model for his kids to not take them anywhere where he put them at risk or exposed himself out of a quarantine zone or something like that. But most important on his radar was he believed that most of his people since March, April had not had a day off. And so he wanted a role model to take 2 weeks off and not to contact them and to encourage them to go and do it. And I looked at this guy, he's quite a young CEO. And I thought, do you know what? That is courage. I like that a lot because that for me is leading by example to enable others to act.
That's right. And
MBOs, KPIs, you can measure that. There's a dashboard for everything. You know, you drove shared services for years.
It's funny. As you were talking, I was thinking about when I started my career. I've managed people for 25, maybe 30 years, but when I started my career, you think about you were so driven by getting your projects done, making doing everything ahead of schedule, and you took no prisoners. I mean, we just didn't care about the how. We were just going to prove ourselves and just run over people to get it done, just to prove ourselves in our career. I will tell you that it took me many years to learn, the transformation of me as a leader of what was truly important. Was never about what we had to achieve. We could achieve anything as a team. I could get the team to the finish line on anything, but how we did it together was what was going to be what was fulfilling for me. So I think this is just another example. Think of COVID as one of the biggest projects we're all facing in our career, and how we are going to show up in that journey for our teams to, at the end, know that there were some good and bad things that happened, but we all walked away having each other's backs, learning from each other, and helping one another. And we got to the finish line. And I hope it will end end as quickly as it came, but life will never go back to the way it was. So we're going to, and I think this is truly an inflection period of who we are as leaders. I said to you earlier, I thought I was a pretty strong leader, ready to go start my own company, do all this, and had pretty good. I felt like I had a lot of what it takes. But COVID is testing all of us. And we have to acknowledge that the more we have each other's backs in life and at work, the more we support one another, and we'll all get through it if we show that humanity. And that is critical right now.
Part of my team in Korea, one of the guys suggested at the beginning, I can't remember who they had watched. Maybe it was someone like Simon Sinek. A video on the team huddle, she called it. So we have this meeting once a week, which has nothing to do with work. And everyone comes onto the call, no mobiles allowed. You've got to be present. And everyone starts with their thumb up, their thumb sideways, or their thumb down. And this just gives the rest of the team a visual nod to how you're feeling today. Clearly, this is good, bit iffy, not having a good day at all. And then we go around the team and everyone gets 60 seconds just to give some context to their thumb movement, their thumb position. And sometimes I'm a little bit cheeky. There's an 8-year-old boy in me that likes to come out to play. And maybe at the end of the meeting, I ask everybody to do it again just to see if anyone's thumbs move. But as the leader, I get to see the thumb movements, and this means I can make a note that maybe there's a little WhatsApp message that's going to go out later on in the day just to check in on someone.
Yep.
And later on in the call, we set each other tasks during the week. Watch this Netflix box set. The Kaminsky Method was set a couple of months ago. Michael Douglas, Aaron, can't remember his surname. Brilliant show. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
Definitely.
Um, and we talk about it. We don't talk about work at all. We just check on each other and then talk about something fun, an HBR article, a movie, a box set, a book. And listening to you about, the way we show up, it allows the team to also show up for each other. And this is something I want to get across, that I think the responsibility of the leader isn't just for them to show up. It's to set the bar so that the team show up for each other. Because actually, I think teams are communicating a lot right now. What teams are missing is the extra communication that you have with people who aren't in your team. If you're in an office, you're seeing people in the elevator, in the canteen, standing by the front desk when you're just having a chat. And I think this is what we're missing. My team are sick of seeing me, quite frankly. Quite frankly.
But that's the point. Like, I think we came into this COVID thing. Everybody said, make sure you're getting the time with your teams. Make sure you're, doing the morning coffee, a team coffee, what do they call a wine toast at the end of the day.
Have a glass of wine at the end of the day together.
Afternoon happy hours. Do continue to have these sessions. Find ways to get really creative and do things together. Okay. I'm not saying any of that's bad. Do it. But let's be honest. Right now, nobody needs any unnecessary video conferences on top of the homeschooling and things like that. So you might want to just validate that. Do they really want to do this? And is it adding value? Or is it something that's working or adding something to the team? Because it may not matter anymore. They may be like, we'd rather cut that out. I know we were doing it, but it might not. We don't need it so much anymore. But, checking and not to make sure that these things are continuing to be valuable. And then the other thing is, again, if you ask everybody to join a happy hour, and 5 people are telling stories and talking, and the other 5 or 10 are just silently being dominated because they're introverts, and that's not really their thing, then you have to make adjustments, and you have to pay attention. So I will tell the story that I can look at my team and in their body language and in the way you said the thumb up, thumb sideways, thumb down. They don't even have to do that. I can, by the way they are sitting in the room and looking and what's going on, that if they're is good or bad. And sometimes it doesn't even take them opening their mouth or having a response to a question. It literally is paying attention. And to your point about doing the follow-up, I cannot tell you how far it goes and how relationships will grow and trust will be the result, because when you acknowledge and you recognize that and you take the time to make that phone call and say, hey, I noticed you looked down. Is everything okay? I cannot tell you the value in doing that. It's the how. Pay attention. Watch and learn from what's happening right now. Listen, watch, learn. And then don't take the time when you can make it matter to follow up with that individual or individuals. We cannot do this alone. We need to, we always talk about teams succeeding or failing together. This is one this whole thing is our teams will succeed. Our companies will succeed or fail in the way based on how they show up in all this.
I think you've brought us full circle, Leah, with the perfect title for this episode, which is Listen, Watch, and Learn, the lessons for business, not just leaders, which was the starting point of this
Yeah.
conversation. And quite honestly, we haven't even touched on trust, inclusivity, diversity, which is going to just force you to come back if you say yes to the request.
I would love that. They're all topics that are near and dear, and I think have a lot going on. So let's continue a conversation.
I
Love to
love
share.
it. We'll put this one out, and we'll get another date in the diary in the next few weeks, and we'll do part two.
Sounds great.
Leah, thank you much. Thank you so much, Leah Frid, over in North Carolina. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for your insights.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Actually, there's a secondary thank you. Thank you for your heart, because you show it very clearly.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I don't know how to do it any other way, but
There's
just
authenticity.
it's important. Heart is important.
Yeah,
So
authenticity right all over your face. Brilliant. Leah Frid, thank you very much. We'll see you again very soon.
thank you.